with somebody who loves me.
Welcome back. It's us, your Fight or Die crew. Adam, founder, host, content, editor, Renaissance man, extraordinaire. We're here in his basement looking at a slightly revamped studio. It's looking good, and we're happy to welcome Charlie Campbell back.
Hello.
And we're also going to be joined by Cole. Cole, I didn't even catch your last name yet.
It's Cole Bakken.
Cole Bakken.
Yeah.
I am, of course, Will Atkinson.
And he's not under any duress right now at all for the listeners. Mention he's in my basement. He's here on his own volition. There's no lotion requirement to be able to stay here.
I'm staring right at a crossbow with some sort of optic on it. There's obviously trophies on the wall.
Space for one more.
For those that don't know, those are dead animals on the wall.
Uh-huh.
I do feel safe here amongst you folks, but I'm interested to talk about the things I'm interested to talk about, right? So, Charlie, last time you were here, you were joining us from Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, you've been up to a thing or two. And, Cole, I understand you have some experience in Afghanistan. Is that right?
I was actually in Iraq.
You were in Iraq?
Yeah.
Okay. But you have...
So my old unit that I deployed to Iraq with, and 310 out of Fort Polk, they're in Afghanistan right now. Deployed about a month ago, right before Kabul fell. Spent some time at the embassy tearing that down, and then we're holding it down over there at the airport. So
let's get to the truth. How many hours have you spent on clearance jobs trying to figure out how to get back overseas?
Too much time, man. Too much time. I found a couple good opportunities. It's just, after the blast, they're not really taking anything anymore. So
I think Sweet Hope, and Will reached out to me and stuff about this episode, bringing Chuck back on, talking about Afghanistan. It's like, how many veterans right now are either trying to figure out how to get back over there, going anyways? You saw that Pineapple Express mission they just pulled off. That's insanity.
Right. Yeah, I was like, you don't even got to pay me, man. I'll just go over there. I do not care. But
Same.
Yeah. That's where we're at.
It's weird now, though. There's like different variations of ISIS. Now it's ISIS-K.
Yep.
Well, even when I was there, too. I mean, now I don't have to, be as OPSEC concerned or whatever. But even when I was there, too, that was still a concern. They were talking to us about, like, the independent players outside of the Taliban and, like, ISIS-K and, like, the Haqqani and all these, like, tiny little groups or whatever. So it's funny hearing people say, like, oh, God, ISIS-K, they're in Afghanistan now. It's like, well, I was hearing, briefings about that when I was over there still, so it's nothing new.
Right.
You just didn't know about it.
Just to refresh everybody, reorient us to when were you last in Afghanistan?
Left, July 17th, I want to say. Like the day after I turned 29, I think. Yep.
2020?
Yep. And then got to Kabul in November of 2019, and then left July, 2020. So,
wow.
So,
And you deployed with the 105th over there with them?
So the 128 infantry unit in Wisconsin, they were deploying, and they needed extra, people or whatever. So, we had two squads from my unit. We all got organized or whatever, and then got attached to the 128 and then deployed with them. So we were just kind of an attachment, but we, still deployed with the Wisconsin National Guard.
Right.
So
what province were you guys in?
We were in Kabul. So
Okay.
Everyone got sent over because we got attached to SFAB units.
Yeah.
So we were sent, all over the place. Like my squad, it was just us and one other 128 squad in Kabul with the SFAB unit. And then there were guys like the other squad that we had in the 105th. They were up in Mazar-i Sharif, I think. Yeah. So, I mean, everyone was spread out all over the country. It was like you were in this own independent little unit. It wasn't like you're going as a platoon, as a company or whatever. It's just squad. So it was kind of weird.
So it's familiar grounds right now with everything going on. You kind of recognize some of the stuff you're seeing in the news, recognize the areas.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, every time there's a picture or a video on the news of Kabul, I'm like, yep, went down that street 8 billion times. They showed a map of the airport and all that. And I'm like, I've seen that map a million times, drove around the entire thing, drove through it. Like, I mean, there is, yeah, it's been a year, but I can still remember all the names for the streets that we had and all that stuff like that. So there is no forgetting that.
Right.
So what was the mission set?
We were attached to one of the SFAB units, and
What does that mean?
Security Forces Assistance Brigade, and they were basically, from my understanding, trying to take over part of the SF unit's training or whatever. So to kind of take some of that stress off of them. So they were training the Afghan units and all this other stuff, and the unit that we were with was mostly engineers. So we were building checkpoints everywhere around the city, outside of the city, fixing barriers and all this other stuff, and had contractors with us too. So it was we were all over Kabul, on the outskirts, in the middle of it. So and our job was to basically make sure they made it back.
When you say contractors, do you mean like private military or workers?
Civilian contract. So it was just civilians that would come out, experts in, engineering, construction, and all that stuff like that. Figure out how to work these T barriers and all this other stuff like that. So we'd be out there making sure they're okay. They don't have to hold a rifle, and then we'd have a couple of private contractors who were former, military guys who would kind of help us integrate into the city and with the ANA and all that stuff like that, so we could kind of, get our feet wet and all that stuff like that. So
what number deployment was that? Was that number 1 for you?
Yep, that was 1.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah.
And was it a 9-month gig?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, that was the first formal deployment. If I remember it, you spent time in an OBGYN unit when you were a medic, right? You can count that as a deployment.
Yeah, I guess the amount of stress, yes. Then I would definitely count that one as a deployment too. Then, yeah.
That's the most stressful day of my life, was going to an emergency C-section with my wife and having to go through that process. I was like, oh man, send me back to Baghdad.
Yeah.
So Adam, it looks like you pulled up a map of the city of Kabul there.
Yeah, I want us to get oriented. So, like, for those listeners, there's plenty of people who are going to be able to close their eyes and know where everything's at. But, all of us went to Iraq except for Chuck here. So, what would somebody listening, a non-Afghanistan vet or even for Afghanistan vets, what are some, points of concern? Like with this current thing going on, this episode's going to come out right away. It's a little bit different of an episode. We're going to try to talk about current stuff and let that go. So, like, for anybody who's at home listening on the radio, what are some things that stand out to you about the area of operation that, people could benefit from hearing?
So there was something called the green zone in kind of the middle of the city or whatever. And, I don't want to go into too much because I don't want the FBI or, the TSA, whatever, coming to my door. But
That'll just give you a hard time next time you try and fly. Is the way.
Well, it's funny
the way
like,
that works.
He's concerned with all this stuff, but I'm on Google Maps and I literally already see where all the embassies are. It's like they've got everything marked. They're rated 4 stars.
I could still draw where the green zone is for the most part right now. Just looking at this map that you brought up on Google Maps.
The Turkish embassy,
FBI.
4.2 stars on Google for 32 reviews.
That's controversial.
I heard the food there was really good. Cannot confirm, but
Why don't we should go back to that because I really think that first review is worth sharing. The Embassy of Turkey. Oh man. Yo, my slime, I know you don't really know Mandem like that, but I'm looking to purchase something style. Just some grub, my driller. Barry Scott, one review. 5 stars 2 months ago.
Dude,
So I
that
guess-
shows like we up until this recent incident, and it's awful, but we had no casualties for 18 months, right?
Right.
Or no deaths at least.
Yep.
This is what guys are doing right now. They're deployed to Afghanistan.
Barry Scott. Yep, that's definitely a real person.
Yeah, definitely not a made up Google account.
Oh, absolutely not. But yeah, so like the middle of the city, green zone, right? It's like safe. That's where we had the checkpoints and all that stuff. Pretty small square. A lot of the embassies and all that were on the inside. And then our compound was right outside of the green zone to the north by that main road going north up to the airport. And then kind of anywhere outside of the green zone was kind of like fair game for the most part. So
Why do we keep deploying to countries who have some airport road that is probably just some shit show of IEDs?
I don't know. I mean, it's a
don't
chicken
know.
or the egg question. I don't know if like the IEDs. I don't think are there before we deploy. The airport road's probably there, but
I can always respect Will's going to keep me honest, right?
yeah, like right there where that yellow road where it goes left, we would always go right. And and
oh, that there's that traffic circle. I bet that
a lot of traffic circles.
that looks like it would have a checkpoint number. And then you said you would head east from there on your usual.
Yep, and then we'd skirt around the outside of it, go find one of the further gates, so we weren't going right there where, basically the outskirts of that city are, or a lot of the villages and all that. And then, so right by where that Abbey Gate is, we would even go past that too. So, I haven't looked at a map of this since I left Afghanistan, actually. Yeah. So this is weird to see that again.
Yeah,
and not on a Blue Force tracker.
Yeah, or the maps that we had hung up in the rooms with all the roads, and I had to make sure when I was Zooming or FaceTiming with my family and friends that I would keep that out of the screen.
Right.
So where was this recent suicide bombing at the airport? I know somebody mentioned like a canal or something like that. It's hard for me to visualize outside of seeing those photos.
So like Abbey Gate, God, where is that? It's kind of like by that corner. Go down a little bit, down to the left. So it's kind of like in that area. I can't remember the exact spot, but I remember that we would drive past it pretty frequently. We'd go into it.
Are these canals right here that I'm highlighting?
I believe so.
I'm trying to think of where those canals were.
So how many people live in Kabul?
All of them.
All the
I have no idea.
it's like 6 million, I think.
Yeah,
Is it
that's
really?
the figure I saw.
It's a pretty big city, and it's weird because there's pockets where there's like that. You see all these houses, they're dense, and then there's some farmland or whatever, just open space, which is mostly mountains or like big old hills, and then it goes back into being city. So it's kind of weird. It's like mini cities that make up a big ass city.
Sure.
So
How long would it take you to get from where you were at in the green zone? It looks like by sort of mileage, the airport is half the distance of the city north of there. So how long does it take to get across town from the middle?
Oh, like up to the airport. I mean, it depends on the time of day too. So let's see. Our compound was. Zoom in like right about there. Yep. So that was us. That was our entire compound, right there.
Right across the street from the Supreme Court of Afghanistan is what that looks like.
And then down the street. So
there's the embassy of the United States.
A month before we got there, right there at that crossroads, that's a huge street. There was a huge IED that blew up. There's still a crater that is still there, and we would drive over or through it or around it every time. So I think one American was killed and like one NATO soldier was killed there too. So, but going from one side of the city to the other, it depends on the time of day. So, it's like going to the west side of Madison, almost like 20 minutes,
Right.
15, 20 minutes.
Right.
Unless you're in, middle of the day, in which case it will take you about an hour or so.
Traffic. What kind of traffic do they have on Kabul streets?
Oh, fuck. All the cars.
All the cars.
All the cars. We would go a little bit further southwest, and we would go to one of the Afghan, like their military compound or wherever, their police compound, and getting there, because we'd have to go in the day, right? We normally go out in the middle of the night. That's why we're called the night rats. But during the day, when we'd go to old MOI, it would, like, traffic would be bumper to bumper. You'd be moving like a foot at a time and all that stuff like that. So it was absolutely crazy going there. And then, of course, if you've ever been to Afghanistan, I mean, I'm sure it was like that in Iraq too, but there's no lines, there's no traffic lights. It's just kind of get in where you fit in.
Right.
So.
Right.
Did you ever see flocks of sheep or herds of goats coming along the road?
Oh, yeah, goats, stray dogs. I mean, every checkpoint that we had, there was stray dogs, and we named them all. of course, and we loved them and gave them jerky and other treats. But yeah, saw some goats or whatever, and then somebody actually offered to sell us a goat for I think like $50 or $100.
It's a good deal.
We really thought about
In
it but
America?
then, yeah. Well,
And I'd be negotiating hard on that one. I'd be like, $50 here. You could have in-ground pool for $50 in Afghanistan.
yeah. Our squad leader shot that down right away. He's like, "No, we're not getting a goat." It's like, "We're not, or we can't." He's like, "We're not." Okay. Oh, okay.
Clearly missed the memo on some of the advanced medical training you definitely didn't sign a non-disclosure agreement for.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Wink, wink.
Exactly.
So you were all over the north side of the city, it sounds like.
The entire city.
The entire
We even
city.
went to the outskirts of the city. I mean, like Adam's zooming out right now on the city, and I mean we didn't go quite that far, but yeah. So like where you see just the yellow roads, that's it. I mean we would be up there, all over the place, northwest, south, east. So we were all over the city. I mean we didn't have that many missions outside of the city limits, but there were enough, I guess. And it would like take us about an hour to get out there sometimes. So
Was it mostly mounted work, or did you guys ever dismount and get on your feet?
no, it was a lot of. We only had one dismounted mission, and it was up to that ridge line north above the city. So like south of the cursor, like right around there. So we did a dismounted mission around that area, which really sucked. I mean, I had fun, but some other people didn't like it. But mostly it was mounted just because we were inside of a city and all that stuff. And so, I mean, we made plans for dismounted missions and kind of had plans, what if we need to, ditch the Humvees or the MRAPs or whatever. But mostly everything was in the trucks. So
How much has that experience ruined the idea of hiking for you? If somebody's ever like, let's go hiking, I feel like for me, it's like, are we hiking to a deer stand? Are we hiking to like do something else, or are we just out walking around in nature?
Just for fun.
honestly, hiking, I mean, I still enjoy that. Driving, though, I'm tired of, like, if it's anything outside of 2 hours, I do not want to drive. And especially driving up, like, big hills or big mountains or whatever, if I feel the car start to move back, no.
That could be one of the questions we had is like, what has the military ruined for you about civilian life?
Driving. Driving for sure.
I've seen too many memes where that sort of thing, like how has serving affected your life from a USAREC account or something, like a recruiter, has gone really off the rails pretty badly in a hurry. So, yeah, let's not repeat others' mistakes there. But
Well, even at the fire department, when when I have to drive the ambulance, we got a patient or something like that. I feel like I'm back in Afghanistan because the rules do not apply, so I can do whatever I want, which feels great, feels awesome. But then it's like, all right, now I got to go back to following the rules as soon as we drop the patient off. So it's like 20 minutes of bliss, and then that's it.
Right.
so while you're doing these, putting in all these miles on roads in Kabul, how are you living? You said you're a night rat, so do night shift things.
Yep. So we would have our we'd get our Warno, get our outboard, plan the mission, hey, we're gonna go out at this time, and then everybody did everything else, pre-mission differently. I had a lot of times I would go to the gym beforehand, just kind of get my mind clear and all that, and then go out, get the trucks ready, and then have the pre-mission brief, and then head out. But
so this whole process starts Monday morning 9 a.m. or when does your Warno come in? When does your op order come in? When are you doing pre-mission checks? Is it all?
Who knows?
Is it T-minus?
It was honestly all over the place. I mean, we would kind of get a tentative plan for like, all right, so this month we're going to go here on this day and this time and all that stuff like that. But, I mean, obviously stuff would be subject to change. Like they would shut down every road in the city for, whatever amount of time. And then, mission would get scrubbed. Like there was a IED that went off, maybe half a mile outside the gate. And so they're like, all right, all routes are black. So no one's going anywhere. And then there would be times that, something like that would happen and they'd be like, well, we still have to go because it's mission critical or something like that. So it would just depend. So, there was no like Monday through Friday, like 9 to 5 type schedule. It was just all over the place. So there was no consistency really, which was fine. But
So from like flash to bang, what's center mass? You find out that you have a mission. Somebody like kicks your rack, or is it like
everything was pretty much planned. Like there wasn't that many like, hey, we need to go out in an hour. Like we need to go out right now. Everything was planned for the most part. So which was nice because it, kind of gave you some kind of a schedule. But, we'd show up, do the pre-mission brief, with the slideshows or do the op board and all that stuff. And then like in the middle of the day, we'd get a couple hours to kind of have some downtime, chill, do whatever you got to do, eat food, and then get out to the trucks like maybe 2 hours before we got before SP. And then, sit there, hang out, shoot the shit with all the boys for a little bit, do the pre-mission brief. And then, I'd get my medical brief, then we'd get the commo brief, we'd get, all this other stuff like, we'd go through command and signal, all that good stuff. And then mount up and then head out. So, I mean, on a day that we had a mission, it was like you're maybe getting ready like mentally for about 8 hours before you're going out because you kind of knew and then you had, all that stuff going on. So, yeah.
Would you roll out just a little before dusk or?
We change the times up all the time. Like the hard time was that we'd be back before first prayers. So if we went past there's a couple of times we went past 4 o'clock just because we had to when we were so close to being done. It's like we don't want to come back out here, in the middle of nowhere or whatever, or like we're almost there, and it would kind of be one of those Met TC dependent things. So. But we would definitely be back before 4 or 5 a.m. for the most part, or we would try to, and then we'd vary our SP times or whatever, so it'd be anywhere from like when as soon as the sun went down to like maybe 3 hours before we had to be back in. So we were constantly changing the times up. It just really depended on what we were doing too.
So you had mentioned, an ID go off, all roads would be black. How often was it that something like that would happen?
IEDs would go off fairly frequently, I guess. But we knew, like, especially with the political climate, that the Taliban weren't specifically trying to target us. Mm-hmm. It would be more individual players or like the Haqqani or like ISIS-K or whatever. Right. So it would kind of depend. And, it was like if it was something that we needed to get done because we're on a timeline, then, we would have to go out. So it wasn't always like if this happens, we're not going out or, so it would kind of depend on like the mission, what the catalyst for that was. So it was a fluid thing. Right. Once again, Met TC dependent.
Right.
Charlie, I want to, maybe I'm the, oddball in the room, but I'm kind of curious to learn more about the different sectarian factions that you referred to a couple times or individual mm-hmm. players. How much awareness did you really have? And can you get into some of the definitions of who those people are?
So all the information that I have is from the intel briefs that we got ahead of time. And I assume that it's pretty easy to Google this shit. So
Adam's got something on the screen right here, but I'm just really I'm curious about your impressions and those of your peers, being like lower mm-hmm. enlisted.
Right.
What, in that sort of strategic situation of lots of different tribal or sectarian entities, like how much did you know as opposed to like the, average American walking around assuming that like Afghanistan just might be the Taliban and that's the bad guys right. and that's it.
So after getting all these intel briefs that we would have, almost, we would definitely have them weekly. We'd have them before every mission. There was stuff that I had heard that I didn't even know was a thing. It's like someone describing the color blue to you or telling you that's a real thing. And you're like, blue's a color? What? And so like ISIS-K, the Haqqani, who I had never heard of until we got there, really, and all these individual players, it's almost like, you go to, like Oakland or LA or whatever, and you got these, you got like the big gangs, but then you also have these individual cats trying to
set in the neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. And like make their name or whatever. And, but then on the news, they don't know how to classify it. So they just call it the Taliban,
Right.
or Al Qaeda, or or whatever. So it's like that's not accurate, but it's just easier to do that as opposed to making this whole explanation. So
Right.
yeah, there was a lot from these intel briefs that I learned that I had no idea about. It was just like my eyes got open to the broader aspect of everything and the strategic things that were going on there. So, there was just so much information that was being thrown at us that I had, no idea that was a thing.
Right.
Like in Saving Private Ryan, how they use those sticky bombs or whatever for the Tiger tanks. Apparently that's still being used today, or like some form of that. So hearing that, I was like, what?
Well, they get a hold of all these old training manuals.
Yeah.
And they're still relevant.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's terribly effective.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like the enemy or Taliban or whoever, has had our equipment, has had nods. Like, we don't own the night anymore. And figure that out very quickly over there. They have nods. They have PEC 15s. They have all the stuff that we have. They just don't have them en masse like we do. But they have enough of them for it to be have a tangible effect on, the operations there. And, hearing that one of your main things that you use, one of your main advantages, and that the enemy has it too, you're like, oh shit, okay, well that sucks. So,
Well, it sounds like you'll have a lot to say when we kind of get into the more current events, specifically the withdrawal from Afghanistan. But I want to hear just a little bit more about kind of like the end of your last deployment, how you wrapped up those last few months, and then what it was like coming home.
So COVID obviously like put a damper on everything. There was like maybe a month or 2 months where, we didn't do anything. We kind of just stayed in the compound, planned missions. Missions got canceled like the day of. So COVID really did a number on everything. And it was kind of nice when we started doing missions again, because then I could, like, the Afghans were deadly afraid of COVID. And there would be a guard or someone coming up to me, and, if I didn't like him, I would tell the interpreter, I'd be like, hey, Ahmad, tell this motherfucker I got COVID. And he would tell him, and then he would back off and look like I just told him that I had the plague, or like I was going to cough AIDS into his mouth or something like that. So, it was nice, but the last couple of months were that, and then hurrying up, trying to finish all the missions. And then toward the last month or two, we were starting to prepare to come home, and it was just like it was odd. It was like more tense, because in the beginning, kind of tense because you're like, all right, this is all unfamiliar to me. And then the middle of the deployment, you're like, all right, we're in a groove, like whatever, the world can fall, but we've been doing this, we're good. And then the end, you start getting close, you're like, all right, more shit is happening. Just, I want to make it home in one piece. I want everyone else to make it home in one piece. Like, and so it started to get a little bit more tense toward the end. And then we ended up leaving, and it was good. So, but I just remember that last month, it was just every time before we left the compound, I was like, all right, don't die. Don't die.
Right.
Okay, good. So
I remember we had something similar, but like on our last roll in, one of the platoon leaders decided they wanted to take their tank and run down a bunch of shacks on the side of the road, which is a no-go. Mm-hmm. Well, then we had to go back out and do a damage assessment and pay out the civilians. And I remember at that point, I'm like, dude, this is a mission we're not supposed to be on. This is going to be the one.
Yeah.
And up until then, you're just so emotionally numb and disconnected that it's like you've accepted your fate. But then when it comes to that, you're like, wait, no, I was supposed to have made it.
Yep.
This is extra.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I remember there was one in the middle of the deployment where at this point, like you said, you're numb to it. You're like, all right, been there, done that. But we went to this one hill that was, for lack of better terms, Indian country, right? And we know, and like I'm putting a Humvee in like different gears, shifting gears. She's chugging up the mountain and all that stuff like that. And we see white kites flying everywhere. We're like, okay, I know what that means. We see all these indicators that we had been, told about. We're like, okay, yeah, we're being watched. Cool. And, all that stuff. And that was, I think, the first time other than, God, I think maybe like the first two or three times we'd been out that I was like nervous. I was still locked in or whatever, but I was nervous. I'm like, oh, shit.
pucker factor sitting.
Oh, dude, absolutely. Butthole was super tight. And but I just remember that was the only time I was kind of like, oh fuck, oh, this is it. Please don't let it happen. Okay. And then after that, everything was fine. It was like downhill as we were going downhill. No pun intended.
How many days was that from Expo when you had that experience?
Oh, dude, that was like right in the middle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was right. I mean, every other time we'd go out to the middle of, of nowhere on the outskirts of the city. You'd be finding these A&A guys in their huts, just high off all types of, heroin and all that stuff like that. And, not paying attention. And you see dudes in black man jams across the street waving their hands at you, making the gun signals at you and stuff. And I was like, whatever. But for some reason, going up that hill, I don't know, in the middle at the edge of the city, that was like that was the pucker factor for me in the middle of the deployment. So I don't know. It was weird.
It's a volatile position to be in, going up that hill, especially struggling to get up there.
Oh, yeah.
Vulnerable, sure.
Yeah. All those tiny turns and all that stuff like that. Because I know if we have to dismount, like, we're screwed.
Right.
How familiar were you with that neighborhood? It was just
that time, that was the first time we'd been up there.
Yeah, for sure.
And then when we got up there too, the A&A, they were all jittery and they were not acting like the heuristics were off. Like they did not look normal.
Afghanistan National Army.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The Afghanistan National Army. Yeah. And the A&P. I mean, I know there's a difference, but I just lumped them all into one at a certain point. So.
What was your impression of them generally? You said that at times they could be jittery, and it seemed like they were high often.
So on the outskirts of the city, not toward not near, the big players or whatever. You could tell they just didn't give a shit because, some of these guys haven't been paid in months, and they were living where they were working. So, I don't really blame them, kind of, sort of, but it's like, all right, well, you're not professional. And then even when we'd go inside, we'd be in the green zone. These guys, their weapons would just be slinging everywhere, or they would just look like the dumpy private that you see, and you're like, all right, you have no idea what you're doing. I mean, I saw one guy take his barrel of his AK on the edge of the city and start swatting at kids. I was like, oh, that's new. So I mean,
I think that's the problem we run into. I think with the Iraqi army and things like that, it was not that different. It's that it's a different fighting force. Like America,
Mm-hmm.
I think then you respect the people that came here and decided to settle this place.
Yeah.
Weren't fucking around. And that when we go to all these foreign nations and you try to train them up, it's just different.
Yep.
I think Charlie makes a good point when he says that they live where they work.
Yeah.
Not even when we're not overseas on a combat deployment, we're in a probably a southern state, sequestered away in a little bubble of knuckleheads that decided to join up.
Called Barstow, California.
Or
That's
or Killeen, Texas.
Gross.
But
then we're just rotating through for some 3, 6, 9, 12-month period of time. So for
Right.
us, we know what the end set's going to be.
Right.
And we're going to turn it over, and it is what it is. These dudes, they don't know, man.
Yeah.
Nope.
well, yeah, their grandma's in her apartment on the same street where they have to report for duty.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody
Right.
knows what they look like, and
Right.
yeah. So you said these individual players, and then it sounds like there's just to paint a little more thorough picture, it sounds like you would know who plays in which neighborhood. That's the 4th Street Bros over there, and that's the. Or is it? Did you have that sort of granularity?
I mean, I didn't it was pretty much. I mean, it sounds really fucked up to say, but pretty much if you weren't wearing the same uniform as me or someone in NATO, you were not a friend, and I didn't really take the time to differentiate between those, and because I was like, oh, it's a little too much effort. I got too many things to worry about. So
yeah, you
it's
got
your
your unit there.
yeah. So if you didn't look like me, I didn't care. Whatever. You're not my friend. And I'll smile, kind of whatever, and make nice. But then that lasted for about a month, and then after that, I was just kind of a dick for the most part. Unless the individual guys that would come up to us or whatever. This one guy tried to take my gloves, whatever. He's like, oh, making a little pointing at my Oakley gloves, and I let him try one on, and then he tried to walk away with it and almost dropped him. was like, nope, that's mine. No.
You're already falling for tourist traps, man.
Well, I gave him a rippy. I was like, hey, man, I'll give you a rip it. Here you go. You give me the glove, I'll give you a rip it.
Now that's a
Here you go.
currency right there.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Dude, I'm so bummed. Quick Trip used to carry it in Wisconsin. Now they don't anymore, and I don't know where I'm supposed to get my rippets at.
Woodman's.
There we go.
I tried one as soon as I got home. Got gut rot instantly.
What'd you guys have out there? Did you have the red flavor? Was that it?
We had, so it was all the sugar-free stuff. So it was the red one and the orange one. And I would drink the orange ones like they were water.
Were they like the little ones?
Yep,
or
the
big-
little tiny ones. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
the problem you run into is you get those over there, and then you come back home, and for $1, you get the big old 16-ounce ones. You're like, we're taking a ride today. I'm sorry, future cardiologist that's going to be in my life, but I'm trying to complicate things for you in my 30s.
Yeah.
I can see my heartbeat.
I don't know how, but I don't think I ever had a rip it.
What?
Glad to have avoided it.
Oh really?
Really.
I think I was a medic in name only.
You're just the most unhealthy guy.
I was there to patch people up, and all the
Same.
other stuff, it's like,
Yep.
I don't know.
We had a really dirty medic in my platoon. Like he got in trouble for not ever putting sheets on his bed in his barracks room.
Funny you
He
say
was
that.
just
My roommate did not put sheets on his bed for the entire deployment, too.
that's not cool. I don't think that's
fucking gross.
hygienic. But anyway, hey, tell me about how did you get out of Afghanistan? How'd you get out of the green zone? How'd you get back to?
So, of course, we had a party with near beers that they had there, the non-alcoholic beers. We all got super wasted on non-alcoholic beers. And then had a good time the last night and then had everything packed up, got on some of the birds, and then, God, where did we go? I think we flew straight to Bagram. Yeah. Yep, we went straight to Bagram, sat there for...
Was it a Chinook?
No. Thankfully, I have not had to ride in a... No, I did one time, I think. Nope, just Blackhawks. Just kidding. Practiced in a Chinook. But went straight to Bagram, sat there in little bomb shelters that they have or whatever, quarantined for whatever, and then...
So you had to do a COVID quarantine?
Yeah.
How long was it coming out of country?
I think it was still 2 weeks. So we were sitting there in these, condemned bomb shelters for 2 weeks with everyone else. They had barbed wire around our area. It's like, okay. And we could only go to chow at certain times and all that other stuff. So we did that. And then after that, we had to wait, I think, another week. And we still didn't know what flight we were getting on, what time exactly. It kind of changed a little bit. And then I think we went straight from there to Kuwait. I can't remember.
Do you remember the airframe?
Oh, it was it was 1:30. It was terrible. I remember it was a terrible flight because I had never been so hot, so uncomfortable in my entire life. It was over 100 degrees in this freaking C-130. We're sitting there. We could not. I couldn't move my legs for the entire flight. I think it was a couple hours.
What
too.
were you carrying?
I just had my aid bag because I didn't want to part with that, and then I had my just little brother or my bag, whatever, with my computer and all the flight itinerary stuff you need and random clothes and shit like that. So.
And you were just moving with 2 squads or what?
Nope. So luckily when we were leaving, they were kind of doing that drawdown, so they were sending people away at random times, and us and the other squad from the 105th, we were the last ones to leave Afghanistan. So our deployment didn't get cut short, I guess, thankfully. And but it was still packed in that C-130, and it was hot. I went down to touch my bag, and the lock that I had on it burned my finger. It was that bad. And I think it was 1 or 2 guys that pissed themselves on the flight because they physically could not get up to go to the little John or whatever in the front of the plane. So
That's
that was
those
fun.
rippets paid off, right? You smash one before you walk up on the back.
That's right. Yeah.
Then 30 minutes in, you're like, oh, that was a mistake.
Dude, I made sure I gave all the boys all the sleep meds, the Dramamine, all the Zofran, everything. Before we left, thankfully the team medic for the SFAB was real cool. He was like, hey man, what do you need for the flight home? I was like, all the sleep drugs,
Right.
all the Zofran that you got. And I made goodie bags for all the guys, and I gave them to them, and people were just pretty much passed out for the most part. One of my guys, he moans in his sleep and he makes noises. He goes, So he was right next to me, and I could even in the C-130, I could hear him. I was like, "You motherfucker!" Like, dear Lord,
No good deed goes unpunished, huh?
it was all right. He wasn't awake for most of the flight, so that was good. He felt all right. Didn't vomit, so which is what I was worried about because I was right next to him.
Miracles of modern medicine.
I remember back in the day, the Nintendo DS had just come out and you could connect via Bluetooth. So like you've got all your bags on your lap and everything sitting on the netting, but you could hold your Nintendo DS above your bag, and we're all playing Tiger Woods against each other the whole flight.
Oh. Yeah, we definitely didn't have that experience.
No, man, when I saw that picture of those 600 Afghani civilians on that C-130, that was the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, it has got to be hotter than shit in there.
I know that feel, bro. You know?
Yeah.
So you hit the ground in this military transport in Kuwait.
Yep. I think
How
we're
long?
in RF John, I want to say.
Yeah, AJ.
Yep.
And you hang out there for how long?
Oh. God, I can't even remember. We had to do the COVID thing again, and I think they isolated us as well. So I think it was luckily it was really nice because I had heard horror stories because my team leaders and my squad leader had both had previous deployments, and so they had told us, this is the smoothest that it has ever gone. I was like, oh, that's good to hear. It doesn't feel that way, but that's
With
awesome.
COVID quarantine included.
So they were super conscious about super conscious about isolating people. We don't want everyone to get COVID. So because when we had came into Kuwait, we were in those big 800 billion man tents or whatever, and it was like they spread us out all over. So, and thankfully because of COVID, they're like, no, we don't want you guys to get COVID. You guys are going to stay together. Oh no, I guess. So did that, sat there for a little bit, and then got on the flight back home. So,
I like hearing that they were so diligent with those precautions because, if I remember correctly, part of the biggest loss of life in the U.S. or of U.S. citizens in the flu pandemic in the 1900s, like 1917 through 1919, where it was soldiers trying to fight in World War I. But so even then the U.S. kind of dodged a bullet. But I'm glad that with those congregating moving parts that it was taken seriously. But from there you got on the Omni charter plane.
I think it was Omni on the way back. On the way there, we flew Delta because there was some mechanical mishap or whatever. But yeah, we had Omni on the way back. Thankfully, on the way to to Kuwait, I got bumped up to first class because I got stuck on baggage claim or the baggage detail.
Yeah.
So I was super happy about that. But on the way back, I'm like, you know what? I was like, I don't give a shit. I'm going home. Dude, you can put me in a cargo bay. I don't give a fuck.
Right,
as long as we're going
lavatory.
home. Yeah. I was like, I don't care.
The honey bucket.
So, and of course, more goodie bags full of sleep drugs. So I was knocked out, I think, for most of the flight home because we stopped in Bulgaria, Ireland, and then we went to Baltimore, and then finally got back to Hood. So,
didn't anyone meet you at Fort Hood? Any family members or friends?
Oh, no.
No. So what was did they throw you in transit barracks and then?
We went to the barracks that we stayed in. There was more units getting ready to deploy. It was the new nice ones they had in North Fort Hood, and they put us in these the barracks that were by the track and all that stuff like that. And then they had all that sequestered off for COVID. They were super we got chow delivered to us. We had our own gym. Everything was sectioned off. Honestly, it was. I preferred it that way. And then it was cool. We had our own little freaking small world that we did not leave, and we can get Grubhub to us and all that stuff. And then we didn't have to do anything because, they were worried about COVID. So it was basically just 2-3 weeks of just hanging out, working out, and playing Madden.
So transit was about a 6-week process at this point. Just being just moving.
Yeah, roughly that. Yeah.
So 3 different quarantines.
Oh. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, so because when we got to Kuwait, it was actually a fairly quick process. They were drill sergeant yelling at people for not having their masks on or being 6 feet apart or whatever, and they had us all in a tent. If you were on the same flight, same deployment or whatever, you were in this tent and you kind of sat there. And that actually, that wasn't a 2-week quarantine. That was, I think, a little bit shorter. It was so long ago. But
Right.
I mean, every step that we went, we had to do a quarantine. So yeah, it was about 6 weeks, I want to say. Yeah,
I mean, a part of me thinks, like, isn't the military a quarantine?
pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. These dudes smell. They're gross. They're nasty. I don't want to touch them.
So like,
Well, there's
Yeah.
4 listeners that'll know they're going to delete the podcast now. Like, oh, the dude's talking shit. Well, he's got to bust out my hygiene, man.
Shower.
What were you saying, Cole?
I was just, when you guys were out in country and COVID and everything was going on, were you guys wearing masks out there?
Unfortunately, yes. And
Really?
that was like right around the time when we started going back out when it started getting hotter.
Yeah.
So it was like getting up to like 8, like even at nighttime too, which is weird because it would get up to like 80, 90 degrees and shit like that. And then, we were out doing missions when there was snow on the ground. It was like 20 degrees or whatever. And then we go from that to, sweating our balls off all the time.
Right.
There was this British engineer that was attached to us. And this motherfucker would literally spray bleach in his face. Like straight bleach. Because he was that worried about COVID. So
That's how you do it right there.
yeah, I was like, man, you're definitely killing the COVID. You're killing a lot of other things too, but yeah, you're killing the COVID. Yeah,
I thought all British people were really intelligent.
some yes. We had a couple of Brit engineers with us, and they were really cool. But this guy, I mean, he was cool. It just I'd never seen someone spray bleach, like straight bleach in their face, like no dilution, just straight bleach, just in
pretty
his face.
hardcore.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we had to wear masks, and had to wear like the nitrile gloves underneath our,
No.
like, yeah, that was what we were supposed to do.
I don't think we
but-
knew enough yet. I mean, you came home in mid 2020, so like at that time we still were concerned with surfaces.
Yeah.
I can't speak for anyone else, but I did not do that because I'm like, I'm not going to wear 2 layers of gloves in 80 degrees. Fuck that.
Right. You got your full kit on, got everything else on. Breathing your own breath is hot enough,
No, yeah, I wasn't doing that.
Were you guys at least able to pull a gator up over your face instead of actually putting on a surgical
Yeah,
mask?
I mean, like
Okay.
even on the compound too. Like you could wear, you could wear your gator or wear like a little schmog or whatever like that. You didn't need to wear the N95s. Just something needed to be covering your face.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
which still didn't make sense because it makes never mind. But yeah, so we didn't have to wear N95s.
Well, we had
all the
plenty of
time.
dudes that wore a gator up over their face and stuff. Like most of our
Right.
interpreters would. They didn't want to be seen when they were
of
out in
course
community. So
Yeah.
part of that's already happening.
Yeah, and there was a couple of guys who, they looked like they were men of the night. You had no idea who the fuck they were. I was like, oh no, I saw you before you put that on. I know who you are. So
Covered up. So, when did you finally get back to Wisconsin?
August 14th.
And what was your homecoming like?
So our dates kept changing because they had initially told us that, you guys could be extended out to November. And they said anywhere out to November. And so, we had no idea. And, it was like, all right, well, anywhere from here to November? They're like, yeah. Like, do we have a set date? No, not really. And so we didn't find out till like almost right before we left. So my wife had her bachelorette party because we got married, on paper before the deployment. And then, so she had her bachelorette party and she kept trying to rework it. I was like, you know what, just schedule it. I'm sure I'm not going to come home the weekend that you have it. Sure enough, we come home the weekend that she has her bachelorette party. So my parents.
Please tell me you busted out of a cake on her. Came out, just let it all out.
Yes, that's exactly what I did.
You were the man of the night for her.
That's exactly what I did do in theory. No, I did not do that. No. No, my parents, my baby sister, and my kid met me at the armory when they picked me up. So it was really cool. And then I got to kind of just process everything at the house. My mother-in-law was there too. My aunt-in-law, I guess, was there as well, and then my dog. So it wasn't too much, So I was able to kind of digest things in steps. Because like they were waiting for us at the house, my parents, my baby sister, my kid picked me up at the armory. So it was like steps of, okay, cool, I'm home now, as opposed to everything all at once. So
Right.
I'm kind of glad that happened because I would have been bawling like a baby back bitch.
And as much as Joe's hate that, I would have hated every bit of that whole thing, but it's better, arguably. I think it's better. Like ours, we just came home off the flight, and 3 hours later, I was driving into Los Angeles, and I was like, "This is a bit different."
Yeah, yeah. Driving was definitely weird. So, but yeah, it was nice to have this kind of escalation
in terms of being surrounded with family.
Oh yeah, yeah,
and that emotional energy.
Yeah, because I mean, I was cool. Like when I saw my parents and all that stuff. Like, I mean, you're with your boys and they're all making jokes like, "Hey, your wife's over there getting drunk somewhere else, having her bachelorette party. Guess what? I'm gonna be fucking my wife tonight." It's like, cool. I've waited, over 9 months. I'm like, what's another 2 days?
Right.
So, yeah, no. So I was fine with it.
Then what the National Guard have for you to do?
We have the Yellow Ribbon event. So it's like they have one to prepare you and your family and your loved ones and all that for the deployment. And then they have 2 separate Yellow Ribbon events to prepare you for, reintegration, post-deployment. Yeah. Like, this is what you're going to experience, and these are the resources that you have and all that stuff like that. So, I mean, it's real good. But, I mean, anyone who's been in the military, you see that and you're like,
yeah.
Dude, I don't want to do that. I just want to be home. Mm-hmm. I don't want to sit through 8 hours of slideshows. I mean, there was a lot of good information that I took from it, though, resources that I got. So it was nice. But for the most part, I was like, dude, I just don't want to do Army shit for a while. Like, I'm good.
Reverse SRP.
What was what was the most valuable part of that?
The military one source was really good. They have like a laundry list of resources for you. So, I mean, you're dealing with X, Y, and Z, like anything from like, I don't know how to cook fucking spaghetti to like, I have these major PTSD issues and I need a fucking service dog. Everything in that and everything in between, and financial troubles and all that stuff like that. So, I mean, it was really good. It was valuable, but it happened a little too soon, I think. I was like, I just want to sit on my couch, play games, drink, and hang out with my family and my dog. So,
so did you get a chance to do some of that?
Yeah. Mostly went through my own private health insurance for like the mental health stuff. But because, I mean, everything else was luckily, I was really lucky. Had a good support system back home. So I was set up very well. But, yeah, I mean, I definitely utilized some of the military resources that they put out to us when we came home. So
one of the differences there, I know, is especially during COVID times, is that community mental health providers had no openings. You're looking at 6-8 weeks until you can really get an appointment. And that was one of the things I think, VA had ready. They could see a little bit sooner, but, the choice is everybody's. But I think that's the hard part is like, you come home, you want to use your private insurance and do it that way. But then all of a sudden they say, kick rocks for 8 weeks. That would be tough.
I mean, well, part of that too is, like there's like, they tell you, hey, mental health is all good. Like you're fine. Whatever you say is not going to be held against you, in your career. And, they say that, but you still don't believe it. So it's like
a paper trail.
Exactly. So I don't want to go through the VA. I'd rather go through my own private insurance. So that way there is no trail that cannot be accessed without my consent. So, I mean, I don't want to speak for the other guys, but I mean, that's the route that I went just in case.
In terms of your career, that's definitely probably the smarter route for sure.
Oh yeah.
But I think ultimately it's just like go get what you need.
Yeah.
Go get it from wherever you're comfortable getting it from. I even as a VA provider, like I never cared.
Yeah.
Like as long as you're getting what you need. If you don't get it there, come get it here if you can.
My perspective is that like all the people who want data on you already have it, and they're sharing it, for some kind of like contact point per, price per contact point that they have on you, or data point.
Fair enough.
Times whatever. Like, and I think this stuff is well documented. I haven't watched the Cambridge Analytica documentary, the Facebook one, but it's strange. Like, I don't know how long ago, but it's now common for me to use my debit card, and then like I don't have an email receipt, but I know that information is going somewhere, and it's not just targeted ads anymore. It's just I'm like, oh man, all my transactions, whatever. But like, I don't want to get too far off in the weeds. My point is, I don't think mental health treatment should have any sort of stigma, and I'm aware that it does exist, like even amongst peers in the military. But I'm like, dude, just get your help, go take your medicine. Either way, I'd hate to see something escalate out of somebody's fear that somebody else is going to say something when there's regulations to protect against that. And, Visa knows, whatever, you know, everybody else, your stuff's out there, and we just have to normalize it.
Yeah. I mean, if I didn't have another option, if I didn't have my own private health insurance through work, I would have utilized the VA, but I didn't. So, because I remember talking to a buddy of mine, and he didn't have private health insurance or whatever, so he actually had to go use the VA, which is great, which is what it's there for. But I had an option, so I was like, all right,
and that's
just in case,
and that's fair, and people like that's good for you to have that access and the ability to make that choice, but for people who might,
guys on
might have
active duty.
barriers, whatever. Yeah, guys on active duty,
right.
whatever. The vet center, in our area, we're lucky to have the vet center as kind of an in-between resource that isn't directly connected to the VA, but, I definitely wouldn't want to.
Right. Because, I mean, they have parts in the VA or aspects where it's like they don't have to report it, they don't have to record it, right? Where it's just between you and the person you're talking to for the most part.
I would say,
yeah, your commander's not going to be able to access your medical record.
Right.
That's the big
Especially not
difference.
in the
In an active duty installation, especially if you get a command referral for behavioral health, they're going to be apprised of that process. And the big challenge that happened is the reason all people are even skeptical is back in the 80s and 90s, commanders were using behavioral health as a way to get the problem children out of their companies. And so behavioral health, they knew that if somebody got diagnosed with a personality disorder, they'd be kicked out. Your career is done. And it could affect clearance, like we know some of those risks. And so because of some of those bad actors back in the 80s and 90s, now we're all living with it and the stigma's there. And so I've seen plenty of active dudes that just drive off post and get their care. And if that's what works for them, I'm supporting it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And if you got to go to your command team, then you ask your provider and say, hey, what could I say that could put me in trouble? Like if I come in and share certain things, like where are the limits? Because what I'll do is I'll maybe pull some of that content out and I'll talk the process of it instead. And so you might save yourself sharing some stuff.
I mean, I appreciate that. There's a lot of good advice there, actionable, pragmatic stuff. I just really experience that as like perceiving a gap. You know what I mean? Because I feel like there's the case, the place we should be at is like, hey man, mental health is a real thing. These are accumulated traumas. This population especially should have, a different attitude towards it. So,
people are trying. I mean, if you look at like all the different non-VA or non-governmental options that are out there, look at Gary Sinise's foundation. He's standing up an entire network of mental health providers. Like, and do I think the VA should be privatized? It's my personal thought, and I don't think it should be. I think it's a great resource, but if there are other ways for people to get care, I think those should be available and let people pick and choose. And if the VA is offering the better product, they're offering the better product. If Sinise Foundation offers a better product, you got to beat them.
Facts.
Again, if there's a barrier that exists in someone's head that whatever it is that is going to preclude them from reaching out and trying to contact a resource because of the way they think someone might think about them, that's a problem, and we should work to.
And I do think it is getting better. Coming off active duty, I left active duty last year, and I had gone to see behavioral health, and I had the full support of my command team behind me. There's obviously the guys in the company, you hear whispers and stuff like that of people, he went to see behavioral health, whatever. But as far as the command team went, it was never used against me, was still able to operate and do everything that I needed to do, and they have my back. So it definitely is getting better.
That's good to hear. I can say from sort of a public safety, volunteer firefighter perspective, having gone through a few formal trainings just to earn, the certifications around that, there was a mental health component. They called it stress first aid, and I really liked the way they did that. They sort of incorporated the concept of critical incident stress debriefs, which I'm fond of just from both a process improvement standpoint and creating that space for people to talk about any issues they might have. And then just the way they have this escalating 7-step process to do stress first aid aligns really well with the training that I've had for like mental health, critical incident intervention training and stuff like that. And really, it's just really important people skills, I think, in certain spaces, and understanding that stuff is everywhere and it happens, especially in traumatic environments. Normalizing getting a little extra help to deal with traumas in sort of like a positively correlated way, I think is an important thing to do.
Yeah.
And all the data shows, like, I think commanders are getting better data to action on when it comes to referring some of their guys and gals over to behavioral health. That, like, we know that PTSD, the sooner that it's treated, the sooner that it's addressed, PTSD might not actually develop. Right. Somebody might just have some kind of acute stress that they work their way through. And so I think commanders are more incentivized. Let's get these people treatment right away, because then maybe I can retain this person and they can continue to, fill my roles and do those things and be helpful. And I think that it's just different, because before, I think, especially in Vietnam, anybody had any combat stress or whatever they were calling it at the time, you'd discard those people. And I think that we're getting a little bit smarter and realizing that somebody goes through a 12-week bout of therapy, they might be all right. They might cope okay. And in fact, like, the longer you stay in some of those military, highly supportive environments, you're better off. It's the folks that you get out right away. Like the Guard, I can imagine that creates a little bit of an awkward thing, but in active duty, just when you all of a sudden disappear and you've disconnected from your entire network, connectedness is the intervention. That's the solution to most of these problems. And when you disconnect people, it's hard. So I always am curious, like, I don't know if you want to take us down that road. Like, when you come back, what's different now that you're home? Like, you still have access to your peer networks, or don't you? I mean, how is that?
So it's actually funny you bring that up, because so me coming back, my transition was a little bit harder than I thought. I thought it was going to be this easy, seamless transitional, thing, and I had more struggles with it, than I did, or than I thought. Like, was it within the first week of me being home and driving, I accidentally, my kid was in, the front seat, and I accidentally slapped her in the face because, I'm used to my gunner's leg being there, because I saw, a big old semi, and just instinctively just bam. I was like, oh, I am so sorry.
Isn't that like the mom seatbelt? The mom seatbelt comes out, or the dad seatbelt just came out?
Which is normal, but if you've ever been in a Humvee, right, there's that big old gap, and you can't just reach out to the person in the passenger seat. And if you just reach at like the face level of an 11-year-old, that's the leg of your gunner, and that's what I just instinctively did. And I was like, oh,
bunk.
Yep, smacked my kid in the face. My bad. So kind of going through that, and being around big crowds and big groups and stuff like that. I thought that was not going to be an issue, and then it took a little bit for that to kick in. And, even being in the Guard, like you said, you're with your guys for a year and a half, every minute of every day. And then all of a sudden, you guys go back to your corners of the state. Some guys I still haven't seen, and like my roommate overseas, I've seen him, I can count it on one hand. I've seen him a handful of times. Yeah. Certain other guys, I've called them, reached out, vice versa. But my team leader was active. He was in the 82nd. And, he said this is pretty similar to how it was, when he deployed, his last couple of times. He's like, it's sad, but, you have this deployment, you have this super intimate relationship with these guys. And even in the Guard, you're with them, and then you guys are off doing your own thing, because you all have lives to live. You got your own civilian careers and families and shit to deal with. So it felt really weird for a good minute, just kind of felt isolated until, you start reaching out or whatever. So it was a very awkward transition period, I guess, is the best way to put it.
And this was when?
Oh, fuck. It's like right away.
So August of...
I think, okay, so I think like the first...
1 year ago?
Yeah, so
August
I think...
14th of 2020.
So I think like August, that was good. I was still in, that honeymoon phase. Like, I'm happy to be home. I can drink whiskey again. I can eat real food that isn't going to give me gut rot. Or, I don't have to, get ready for a mission, because I ended up having 3 months off of work, with leave and then all the vacation I had, compiled. So I was just kind of hanging out, doing, whatever I wanted to do.
Right.
And which is great, gives you time off, but also gives you time to kind of, have nothing to do. And then also think.
Going from 100 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour pretty fast.
It's like, all right, well, I had this and that to do. I know on this day we have to go out and do this. And then it's like, well, shit, what do I do now? Drink and play video games?
Yeah.
Drink and go to the gym? Sure, why not? So just making that transition was kind of weird. Was kind of off. And then not having all my guys within like arm's reach or spit's reach or whatever was just kind of weird. It was like I can't look over and smell, the guys I'm used to smelling, if that makes any sense. So it was just it was
unfortunately
really
it does. Gross. But true.
Yeah, I could still pick their scents out. If you blindfolded me, I'd be like, oh yep, oh that's comfort. Ugh.
How was it? Everybody else comes back from deployment and you get to see everybody's faces. Then you go from deployment, you come back and everybody's got their face covered. And for me, I know when I was deployed, like I wanted to see somebody's face so I could make an assessment of that person. When I came home, I got the freedom to do that. And so for me, I don't know. You come back and everybody's wearing face coverings for COVID. Was that weird? Was it just normal? Was it anything?
With the face coverings, I mean, like it was kind of weird, but I was still over there when COVID happened. So some of the guys, like, everyone was wearing masks and all that. So, I mean, there's, you start studying heuristics and all that, you start reading all these other tells, right? So, I mean, like the face, obviously, a huge thing to read, but there's all these other things that you can look at a person and be like, are you hostile? Are you going to try to kill me? Am I going to kill you? Okay. And you start going through all that, that mental checklist. So there were so many other things that I could read. So like the face mask, I don't ever remember that being an issue for me. It was like watching your posture. Okay, cool. Are you touching your right hip? Because I know most people are right-handed. Are you okay? Cool. Are you going for your back? So it was just all this like little stuff, and so the face mask kind of wasn't that big of a deal for me. It was just kind of, there.
Yeah.
So.
Did I feel like that like speaks for the concealed carry? Like if anybody's gone through that process and then you start carrying, you start to look for everybody else who might be carrying, right?
Oh yeah.
But then you realize nobody else is looking at any of this shit, right? Like this is just us going through the world, seeing the world that way. Nobody else sees anything. And I think the first thing they tell you to do is go walk around Walmart with it once and realize that nobody gives a shit about you.
Oh,
and
no.
What a big difference that is. And like how many military veterans then spend the rest of their lives always kind of looking at the world that way.
Well, that was a conversation that I had with my therapist initially.
You don't have to put your mic away from the sound of freedom, by the way.
Okay.
On this podcast, you can hear the sound of freedom.
America.
Those mountains are kind of blue.
So I remember like the first, I think it was like the first month or two, I would constantly, because, you'd always have your sidearm, right? And so I would constantly be tapping my right hip and then nothing would be there. And for the first month, I think there was just solid panic until I realized it's all right. We're in Target. Karen's not going to try to kill me. It's okay. Like if she does, it's going to be with a paper mache bag or something like that. So it was fine. And then, it was just really weird to make that transition and be like, all right, we're good. And
what about when Karen stops in the middle of an aisle and all you want to do is kick her in the back and yell fatal funnel?
That's a thing. That's a thing. Don't everyone listen closely. Don't stop in the doorway wherever you are. Like don't hang out in doorways.
All right. At that point, I kind of realized that I'm not going to be the second guy or third guy through. So whatever, Karen, just foot to the back. Be like, go ahead.
And
go
instead
ahead,
you're like, could you? Hi, I would like to get to that shampoo.
Yeah, some people, you start realizing that you're like, you're not spatially aware at all. You have no idea who is around you. It's so fucking frustrating.
My wife has come to enjoy watching my discomfort build whenever we're out in a social setting like that.
Yeah,
I'm just like, even her, like in the house, she'll like stop in an area that like there's no space for two to get through. And like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is killing.
Right.
Like,
it was like that in the airport. We, the three of us took we went on a flight, I think, to Florida. And this was like months and months later. Right. And even like now, still crowds make me a little uneasy. Right. Like not too much, not to the point where, I'm, fucking freaking out or whatever. But my wife and my kid, they will stop like in the middle of the hallway of the airport and adjust something. And I'm like, hey, let's not be here. Let's move.
Right.
let's just get off to the side and take a knee.
Yep. Go like Beyonce said, to the left, go and move. So like that kind of stuff does not leave, I don't think.
No, I don't think it does, but I think that's as long as you become aware of it and you know that like you're standing there like, my God, this is driving me nuts. As long as you can check in with that,
right.
I think that's super helpful because then you can choose to breathe or whatever you can do to get through it. Go another way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their shit, man. It's ours. It's the burden we carry.
True. I mean, and my therapist told me that if you yawn, he actually told me this. If you yawn, right, that starts that process. Like, I'm okay. Like, I'm safe. All right, fight or flight. We're getting rid of the whole fight thing. So we're good.
I mean,
We're all right.
that's how lions like meter their energy when they're hunting, right? You'll see a lion yawn. It doesn't mean that it's bored or disinterested. In fact, it's trying to regulate its emotions because it's so tuned up at the time, and it is a helpful skill.
I mean, I did that yesterday when I was driving by a semi on the rig. Like, I was in the back seat. I wasn't even driving, and I was like, all right, we're good. It's okay.
I thought you were saying yawn, like, because people might be scared of the pandemic. And I'm like, you could just flick a booger at them. Get them out of the doorway. Excuse me.
Man, I got this real bad cold, and I can't smell or taste anything right now. Oh, man, I don't understand.
That's the contagious rash bit in the crowded elevator. That's a good one, too. So you have 3 months off after you get back in August.
Yep.
And then you decided, you ended up on another deployment shortly thereafter, right?
Yep, went to D.C.
Oh, Tell me about that. How did that unfold?
I was voluntold to go there. We did our SRP, right? Like in the Guard, you do your SRP every month to make sure you're deployment ready. And then they're like, hey, who wants to go to D.C. if we have to go? And I don't think I could put my hand any closer to the ground. I was like, nope, I'm good. No, I'm good. I don't want to go. No, I'm good. And then I get a call the next day, or like 16.
Was there any more pretext to it than that? Or
No,
like, hey,
not
if
really.
we have to go, like, well, why would we have to go?
No, of course not. No, it was just like, hey, if we need volunteers to go to D.C., who wants to go? And they kind of gave some spiel, but at that point I was just kind of checked out. I'm like, you already said go to D.C.? I'm like, nah, fuck that. And
But for everybody else's benefit, like, this was January of this year, right?
oh God. Like December, because it was January because
It would have had to been after January
right
6th.
because the insurrection happened. Yeah, okay, yep. So it was in January, and
So did you follow whatever happened on January 6th? Like, I'm pretty
Yeah.
checked out on that thing now too.
oh yeah, no, I remember I was at work and we happened to be watching the news because I think we were eating.
You're doing Madison Fire stuff
Yep.
at this point.
Yep. So Madison Fire Department, right? We all eat at the table together, eat lunch and eat dinner together, and we're all eating dinner or eating lunch, and breaking news, like every channel switched to it.
Do you remember which channel you had on?
Oh God, I don't know.
You're poking the bear, Will.
The local it was like the local news channel. I can't remember. I mean, if you asked me what I wore yesterday, and I was at work yesterday, I probably still can't tell you. Like I don't
It
know.
was a uniform.
It was something blue with white writing on it. I don't know. But yeah, I remember being at work watching it, and we were all glued to the TV for most of the day. So, yeah.
So then you went to SRP with the National Guard, and they're like,
Who wants to volunteer and go?
totally unrelated question, totally unrelated to recent events. Who wants to go to Washington, D.C.?
Yep.
Most expenses paid. And you said, not me. And then a day went by and they said, yes, you
Yeah,
do.
I get a call the next day, and you get that script like, hey, and if you've ever been in the Guard, and you get that script like, hey, you're being voluntold basically to go, blah 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 blah. It's like this 3-minute spiel they have to call every single soldier and read to them like, this is what you have to do. It's like, fuck. And I'd already been through like half a bottle of wine. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go pack. This sucks. And then I found out that only one other guy from our deployment in the 105th ended up having to go. The other guys, for whatever reason, were exempt from it or something. So then me and him were just, hanging out for most of the time in D.C., just bitching and complaining, like most Joes do.
So what did that look like? You got the phone call, frowned a bunch.
Yes, I definitely frowned 1 or 2 times.
Sure. You packed your bag while finishing your bottle of wine.
Yep. Reported to the unit, and then, did the whole hurry up and wait thing, packed, got everything ready. And then we headed to our, they split us up into units, trying to organize all these people last minute. So ended up organized. I get put into this random squad or whatever in this different company in the 105th. And then we go down to DC, and more hurry up and wait.
So you got organized. You reported to the local armory there in Reedsburg.
Yep.
Then from there, it was all the way to D.C.
Went to a different armory, and this is like days and days of hurry up and wait while everyone's trying to get consolidated and figure everything out. So, did that, and then they flew us in somewhere in D.C. or Virginia or whatever. I honestly,
Where'd you fly out of?
Eau Claire?
Somewhere
Madison?
in the state.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember.
Was it what kind of plane? Military aircraft?
Oh, civilian one. Yeah, no, it was a civilian aircraft. No, it wasn't. No, it was. I think it was the 128 out of Milwaukee. Yeah, I think it was like the 128 air wing or whatever out of Milwaukee. So we flew on this like boom thing or whatever, and there were dudes bitching about how uncomfortable it was. I was like, man, you have no idea.
Luxurious compared to your...
Yeah. Oh, it was air regulated. No, it was nice. It was a good flight. I enjoyed it.
Were they complaining about the lack of in-flight snack?
Oh yeah. They're like, hey, where's my peanut?
This
I want
bag
my
is so
hot towel.
small. This bags get smaller every year.
And I got attached to a squad that had a lot of dudes who were relatively new and all that stuff like that. And they tried to spread a lot of us who had just got off the deployment around. So there was at least some experience for whatever that was worth. I don't know. But yeah, so
Right.
just kind of hearing some of the bitches and gripes. I'm like, guys, there's more important things.
You haven't even learned how to complain yet.
I know.
You guys complain like a bunch of amateurs.
Yeah, dude, your complaining level's at a 3. I'm at like level 75, bro.
So
Were some of them the
salty.
ones that went to the politicians complaining that you guys were only allowed certain food? Was that part of the thing you guys were part of?
See, so some of that stuff like that and sleeping in the parking garages, no idea. I ordered Grubhub every single night I was in Virginia.
Yeah, like from the plane full of complaining privates to wherever you were. How'd you get there? What'd
We
you
got
do?
down. They ended up putting us in like Virginia or something like that. So we took a bus there and they put us up in a hotel. And then they, everyone got their rooms or whatever. I was in had 2 queen beds in my room, so that was pretty cool to myself.
Just fraud, waste, and abuse.
No, it was terrible. I was complaining the whole time.
You're only one person.
Dude, that'd be an Article 15 coming my way for flying my family out.
yeah. You got this spare bed. Better throw a wife and kid on it. Why?
Yeah, why not, man?
Yeah.
If
What
it-
was your?
If it made you feel any better, one of the beds squeaked a little bit if you moved in the right way. So there's that.
Nice. Did you chose the squeaky bed for yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yep, sure
So
did.
were you just assigned to hold down that bed, or what was your mission?
Yep. So honestly, we didn't get much info and until we kind of got on the ground. Like we were like an hour and a half away. So we did there. We had our briefings or whatever, and like, hey, we're gonna go do this, and we're gonna get a bus. Like we sat on a bus for an hour and a half, go into D.C., get to the armory, get our weapons, get all the 8 billion briefs that you got to get, and stage. You go like we were in a parking garage. We staged there, go to where we have to stay, and it was just like really didn't do anything or much at all. Like. It was weeks and weeks. It was like a week of buildup for kind of nothing. So
Were you QRF? Were you guarding something?
we were QRF toward the end, but for the inauguration, we were watching, I think, like the back side of the Capitol because we had our long guns on us, or our M4s. So they didn't want that like in the news and being visible and all that stuff like that. So we're watching the east side of the of the Capitol, I believe. Yeah, so like Independence Ave. Like I slept I took a nap in the Library of Congress while we were waiting for our shift.
Did you get any smarter?
No, but I did take a poop there, which is the crowning achievement of my time there. So I'm very happy about that.
Not everyone can say that they've done that.
You've literally left shit in the Library of Congress. That's kind of a big deal.
It was glorious too. It was a good poop.
Almost like being published.
The poop
Almost.
the poop was fueled by Chinese food. So
That
it was
you were
amazing.
Grubhubbed.
Oh yeah, that I grew up to my hotel.
Okay, I had no idea what your experience there was like. It was just, I just thought it would be interesting, that you ended up on a mission to protect the Capitol during Inauguration Day, and so it just for my own purposes, like so I have a clear picture of it. You were hosted in a hotel in Northern Virginia and then bust there for that purpose.
Yep.
And then bust back.
Yep. So we were just doing security. We had our like shifts or whatever. And then we did our shift for the inauguration. You know, President Biden left, and then we stayed there for a little bit. You know, it was just like this was pretty. Like I still felt like I was pretty fresh off the deployment. Like I was still, you know, dealing with my own issues from it. So at first I was kind of like heightened, and then I started to realize I'm like, this is not the same thing at all. So it was really weird to go from like up, down, and then be like, all right, yeah, we're fine. And it was just more hurry up and wait than anything, and it's kind of being a presence and hey, the Army's here. Woo.
Dude, that's all you want as a leader is to have a bunch of bored combat arms dudes with no mission. And it's like, you're in D.C.
Yeah.
I can only think of all the stupid shit privates could have gotten in trouble with.
Let's give them energy drinks.
I'm pretty sure D.C. has legal weed. So
Did you guys have rippets out there?
I asked. No one did. And a lot of people I asked had no idea what I was talking about, which really pissed me off.
Amateurs.
I was like, all right, fine, Monsters it is. I'll just drink Monsters. Fine. Ugh, peasants. But
that's actually the question we ask people if they're going to come on the podcast is if they know what rippets are. And if they don't, we don't host them.
Sorry, you actually kneecap them if they don't know.
my kneecaps are intact then. Thank God.
And then some Vietnam vet will be like, you mean Budweiser? I'm like, oh, man, they didn't give us beer.
Son of a bitch.
Show off.
So that sounds like an interesting way to start 2021. How's the rest of the year been for you to this point?
It's been all right. I mean, I'm still breathing, so, you know, can't really complain, but it's been ups and downs for sure. Like, harder time adjusting than I thought. So, still kind of, you know, figuring it out and all that stuff. And I thought it was going to be like a straight up linear thing. Like, all right, it's going to get progressively better from 0 to 100%. I'll be fine. And then that's not the case. There's been ups and downs and all that stuff like that. You know, back to talking to a therapist, back to being on meds and all that stuff like that. So, thankfully, have a great support system, which has helped. But yeah, it's been weird. So extremely weird. Just kind of deal with all that. So.
Oh yeah, there's another thing is like with current events. Geez, man, like all of a sudden then Afghanistan has the withdrawal that it's had and the vacuum that has been created that all these other organizations, Taliban, ISIS-K, and everybody else is piling in and on. Normally we leave a lot of our equipment as for the other, you know, resident force to be able to use and
yeah.
Now what, right? Like, is your only hope the Northern Alliance that maybe those were actually the warfighters were? Like the whole time you're just training anybody who wanted a paycheck, but now you actually figure out who the warfighters are?
Yep.
That's my hope.
For what?
For the country of Afghanistan. If that government is going to if there is going to be a government and there is going to be an Afghanistan as a state, that they're going to have a military of their own. They can't continue to be ruled by anybody who has outside influence. You know, we know the Taliban's very well funded by a lot of other countries and organizations. ISIS-K is very well funded. That they're going to have to compete, and unfortunately, they're going to have to want to be motivated to kick doors down because that's what it's going to take.
So your fear is that it'll just again become a haven for people who mean the U.S. harm.
That's the play. I think for anything, it's the playground for that type of ideology.
What do you mean? Just anti-U.S.
I don't know, empirical. I don't know how you want to throw it. Basically, they hate freedom.
Anti-West.
I was going to say,
Anti-West.
like, yeah. I mean, I thought you were going to say imperialist, like anti-imperialist, and then you said anti-freedom. And I'm like, those like, oopsies. Wait, hold on.
I'm just trying to think of, you know, their entire philosophy is to control, right?
Yeah.
Who's they?
Any of those folks that are players in
Bad
that
guys.
space, you know, the hyper-conservative Islamists. And so I think that's the thing. It's my belief that extremes are where the problems can lie. And you know, we have our own stuff here in America.
Absolutely.
You know, but we have the structure in place. We have, believe it or not, we do have some trust in our government, even though the people that hate them the most. You know, we trust that our roads are going to function that day. We trust that our fire department is going to show up for us. You know, maybe our politicians aren't going to do the job, but you know, I think Afghanistan's got a long way to go. And if
I imagine that, you know, there are some communities that would feel differently. You know what I mean? Like
are we Afghanistan? We're not, right?
No, but
and so what's the difference? Is we have people who are actually willing to stand up and fight for your own stuff.
An IED didn't go off on North Sherman Ave and like 2 years ago, and the hole is still there. Like we have some we have infrastructure. So I see what you're saying there.
It's my hope that like those guys that bailed out to that northeast side or northwest side of the country, I don't know the AO that well, but like all that Northern Alliance thing, I'm hoping they're getting their shit together, and I'm hoping that we're supporting that.
And
I'm hoping that I'm hoping that they can get in a position where they can do some stuff, and maybe all that other fat that was just sitting and collecting paychecks, those Taliban dudes that were joining the Afghan military. Hopefully they all ran when it came time, and we actually have a good idea of who is going to be the fighting force now.
20 years is a long time to be somewhere, but 20 years is not a long time for a government to thrive.
It's nothing in the context of that country's history.
Exactly.
Right? 20 years is just a drop in the bucket over thousands of years of warfare.
Well, I mean, 20 years in U.S. history is like a 12th, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
we're a young country.
I'm like, it's not clear to me what the fucking point is, of what. Like, I don't like.
One of the generals over there for the security teams or whatever. He was like a legit Billy badass. Like he had spent his entire career, just killing the Taliban. And we went on this dismounted movement with him, and he showed us like this area or whatever.
It's his crater.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, he was. I mean, you could tell the way he carried himself was very different than some of the other guys, right? Like, most of the 99% of the other Afghans or whatever that we ran into be like, all right, if we have a Donnybrook, like, all right, man, let's go. Like, I'll kill you. This guy, all right, this might be a 50-50 chance, maybe less. And so, but this guy, no bullshit. He was awesome. He was good at his job, but because he was good at his job, right, he ended up being removed from his position and being put somewhere on like the tertiary of the country. Yeah. And I don't even know if he's still alive right now, but like, yeah.
Well, those amnesty cards, I tell you what, I follow a couple ANA dudes on Instagram that are kind of going incognito right now, and they're just posting pictures of their friends that were granted those amnesty cards by the Taliban. And it's pictures of these guys that, somebody, I saw one earlier today. Somebody came and knocked up on this ex-ANA Special Forces dude, banging on his door, and they're like, hey, we need help going to the hospital or whatever. Came outside, and they just popped him.
Yeah, it's ruthless over there, man.
Yeah.
I think it's the hard part is that like over 20 years, there's been plenty of dudes that spent a lot of time in that place.
Yeah.
Have invested in a lot of relationships and have met good warfighters over there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then this happens, and now it's like, what the hell?
Yeah, there were some of those interpreters that we talked to. I mean, like even some of the not all the ANA guys, were pieces of shit.
No.
There were a lot of guys that that I met that I was like, hey man, I'd fight with you. And then some of the interpreters too. They were just solid dudes, and I've talked to a couple of them recently, and they are kind of left to hang out and dry, pretty much. And it really sucks. It's like, I can't do anything for you, and me telling you I'm sorry, that doesn't really help you out much. Like that doesn't mean shit when you can come to America, but then your family has to stay there and figure out. And it's like, what do you do?
The visa issues and stuff like that, right? And like then, of course, you've got people who are making, I think, fair criticisms when you say, oh, an entire flight of military-aged males, and you're, the other side of their argument is their families don't have visas, they can't come, so they're all going to come, try to get set up, and then try to get their families over here if they can.
Well, some of these guys have spent years waiting to get visas or green cards. Like they've been like one of the interpreters that I talked to, he worked with multiple SF groups. Like his resume was long as shit, and he had been waiting 5 years on top of all the time he had spent in putting in that work. And then he's stuck at some airport. Like I hope he's still breathing, and his family is. But like he did all this stuff, and then he has nothing to show for it, pretty much. So it sucks. It's frustrating.
It is.
And this isn't just an Afghanistan problem. Like this stuff happened in northern Iraq all the way down to Baghdad at a period of time. And I know I kind of went through my own reckoning when that happened, and like, what was my purpose and all that. And I've come around. So now I see these Afghanistan dudes experiencing that same thing. But then Vietnam's not untouched. Like how many operational forces worked through Lao and stuff like that with Hmong dudes, and we're just hoping that some of those dudes they worked with that were Hmong could get over here, and we know that there's been a good refugee effort there, but
yeah, that's
kind of make it.
That's where I'm at with some of this is like, what proportion, even if we're able to extend our best efforts to our best contributors, from allied forces, like what proportion are we going to be able to provide that solution for? That seems like a really small percentage of what's going on in the country and the people that need help there. And and you brought up Vietnam, you brought up Iraq, I think there's plenty of other historical precedent where maybe in Korea, maybe in the Philippines, maybe elsewhere, American interference or activities or whichever, however you want to look at it, has resulted in a destabilized political environment, and people have suffered. And to me, it's like, sure, people did a lot over there and sacrificed a lot and have been through a lot, but at some point, like, the sunk cost fallacy is also real too. And if there's a pattern that keeps repeating itself and manifesting itself, and then we just look back a few years after it all ends, and we're like, boy, that was bad, and that's all that happens. Like,
hashtag vote.
Dude, adult decisions are hard, flat out,
They are.
right? And these are big, complex adult decisions that all these countries are having to make and things like that. And when you have to make that choice to cut away 20 years of all this stuff and not be able to do everything you can, that's hard.
Yeah, you do got to do something you don't want to do either way. You got to leave a residual force, or you got to rip the Band-Aid off. I personally have my own issues with the way that it was executed, for sure. We have a battle drill for breaking contact. There's definitely a thing as such as a tactical retreat, but we've got residual forces all over the world. We've got people in Africa. We still have about 2,500 dudes in Iraq. You know what I mean? We've got guys all over.
And that's
the
what we
place.
know about, right? Those are the
That's what we
published
know about.
stuff. How many groups are out there operating? SEAL teams are operating, CIA teams, etc. 3-letter orgs that we probably don't even know exist yet.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a valid point that you make. Like, regardless of where what you do, it's going to be bad. It's like room clearing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You pick left or right.
Right.
Regardless of which way you pick, you probably going to get shot. But you got to make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So
And stick with it.
Exactly, like you can't go left and be like, oh no, just kidding, I'm going to go right. No. So, yeah, I guess just having, I don't know. I feel like some of these strategic and political decisions are above my understanding, which is fine, which is why, I'm not a politician, which is why I'm not in the government. But at the same point, could still be frustrated about it and still talk about it.
yeah, Charlie. I mean,
Drive everything.
I think that it might be above your current understanding, but certainly not your ability to understand. And I think that
True.
you probably, and anyone listening and the people in this room especially probably have a pretty sharply developed sense of civic responsibility and duty and things like that. So I become concerned when I hear too many generalizations and things and sort of moving away from a certain amount of expertise on something before, people opine or are asked to opine, which is one thing with the recent changes in Afghanistan. Like, I've been asked my opinion a lot. And I'm like, man, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm just a vocal soldier that people know. They're like, well, what do you think? I'm like, I think you should read a book. I think I read a book, and I can tell you which book, but
How do you feel about what's going on in Afghanistan?
oh man,
right
how
now?
do I feel? Like, I hate it here.
Yeah. What kind of question is that? Like, how much time you got?
Yeah, right. Right.
How much booze you got on you right now? Like, fuck you.
Well, I got that this week. I'm like the token combat vet in a lot of my workspaces, right? So like somebody asked what my opinion is. And at the time I was asked, I had just gotten the alert on my phone that we knew a corpsman had been lost, and the number went from 4 up to 11. And now we know it's 13.
Yeah.
And at that time I was like, I don't know. I'm in it right now. Like, I don't have a response.
Yeah.
Do everything that you think, trust your gut. If you're wrong, ultimately you're wrong, but at least your intent was good.
Yep.
And rest in peace to those guys.
And the hard part, I think, right now that I see this is like, I would think this would be an issue that would unite veterans, and I don't see that. Like, I hope that that's ultimately what happens, but I see that people's polarized opinions are so far apart that it's fracturing the veterans community. And like, my hope as my life works is to bring the veterans community to better and have veterans have great lives. And man, it's frustrating to see the way this is playing out.
I have been asked that a million times, even before all this happened. How do you feel about Afghanistan and all that? And it's like hearing thank you for your service. How do you respond to that, right? And so even with this, like, how do you feel about what's going on in Afghanistan right now? And what I've been just kind of repeating to everyone is like, what? I don't know. I'm real conflicted. I feel one way, then I feel the other. I don't know. I don't know how to feel, so I can't really tell you. And that normally kind of shuts it down right away. And at a certain, sometimes I'll give a a longer answer, but for the most part, it's just, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out, and I'm okay with saying that because I honestly don't know. Go back and forth all the time. So
I think a big thing is just being able to humanize it. Us vets, guys that have been over to whether it be Iraq, Afghanistan, or even Africa, and just seeing the poverty, seeing what those people have to go through, being able to humanize it. Not just, I watched it on the news from, 01 to 09, and, I completely forgot we were over there for 10 years, and now all this is happening, you know what I mean? Like, just being able to humanize it, I think, goes a long way.
When you say that, I'm thinking the humanity of it. Like, the hard part for me is when they showed the footage of that Air Force flight getting off the tarmac and people were just grabbing on where they could.
Can you imagine seeing that?
That'd be awful, man. Especially like you go in as the Air Force or these groups that go in and pull off something pretty spectacular to start with. You really want to be proud of it, but you're just not going to get there probably. And they're going to have to come to terms with that. The good thing is I read up on that a little bit, at least what was available to me, is that it sounds like the moment they touched ground, they did get that flight crew off and start talking to them right away. And so hopefully, that's awesome. They're not going to, awesome. It's not going to linger in their memory forever.
That's one thing. We're very privileged to be Americans and live where we do. I can't think of a scenario, at least in my lifetime, where I'll have to see something like that.
Yeah, like even for all the issues that we have here right now, trying to describe, being overseas to somebody, you have to experience it. And the most often phrase that I've used is, it is a different world. Mm-hmm. And it's like trying to describe the color red to someone who is colorblind. Like, I can make all these descriptions, but like until you experience it, and that's not like riding a high horse thing. It's like, I cannot describe to you how it is. Like it is. Even if you've been overseas and haven't been in like a combat situation or combat arms, whatever, you've just been, you flew in on a bird, dropped supplies off, and you just saw it from like a couple hundred feet in the air. Like you just have to experience it, have to see it. There's no way to accurately describe it.
I think that is exactly 100% the best way to put that.
But we have to have the wherewithal to know that we had that experience and that other civilians here in the States don't have that experience, and therefore we got to give them a pass sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true.
Some stuff comes through.
That's true.
When somebody bitches about the weather and you're like, what? You got no control over this thing, man.
Right.
I mean, what else do you get mad at?
Right.
I mean, I do that too. I find myself bitching about inconsequential stuff and then, realize and then come back to that. It's like, well, I've seen worse. So it's not that bad. It's all right.
What about, on the context of this Afghanistan and refugee resettlement and all that stuff that's happening, Fort McCoy, Wisconsin is a selected site. People have already started to arrive over the course of the past week. Do you guys anticipate a mission there? And I'm not saying, like, clearly it's a humanitarian function, but, like, do you guys think there will be anybody from your unit will be called in for any type of, readiness setup?
I have no idea, and I hope not. I say that just because I'm, trying to get my own life, start paramedic school on Monday. So I already have enough to worry about, paying the bills, getting stuff done around the house and all that. Like, raising a kid, having a wife, like I have all this other stuff to do. So hopefully not. And it sucks to say that, but like, I hope not. And I can't imagine that there's anything they're going to send 11 Bravos over there to do to help the Afghans over in Fort McCoy. I mean, if they do,
Charlie,
I think we have bigger problems.
Just listening, you kind of say all that, like, it makes me curious how the National Guard really fits into your life now. You know what I mean? Like, what are your plans? What's it like when you have drill and you have your AT stuff? I mean, how disruptive is it? How do you have to plan for it and balance it with other things?
I mean, it's disruptive, right? Like, just like, your tire popping on the way to work or whatever, right? The only difference is that I volunteered to have my tire popped, in this scenario, right? Like I signed a contract to say, yeah, I'll have my tire popped once a month, right? So it's fine. And then I actually enjoy what I do. I enjoy being a medic. I enjoy being, an infantryman. So I actually like going there. All the like the briefings and all the other, monotonous stuff like, got to do inventory for the 8 millionth time, right? Like, it's part of it. But for the most part, I enjoy doing it, and I'll bitch about it, but I still enjoy doing it. So there are definitely times where it is a serious inconvenience, like going to DC, but for the most part, I mean, you know, I enjoy what I do. You know, I don't think anyone joins the Army or re-enlists in the Army because of the massive amounts of money that you're going to get. No one volunteers to deploy because of the massive amounts of money you're going to get. So you have to, at some level, base level, enjoy what you're doing, who you're with, and all that stuff, which is what, you know, what I have.
It sucks for you because my first year in the Army, they gave me $900 a month for money. I thought I was pretty rich.
You're
I'm
rich.
kidding.
Was that like 1971?
No, man.
That was
2002. This
that was
is
basic training life,
right
dude.
after 9/11, dude.
That was just how it was. It was 1086, and then they took taxes out. And I'm like, well, I guess that month is gone.
That's how I blow civilians' minds away. Is when you tell them how broke soldiers are, and it's just like they don't make anything. You got to be either higher rank or you got to get some time.
Yeah.
Before you really have anything to show for yourself.
$900
get
a month
married.
is a bar tab.
Oh man. I wanted to tell you a story, Charlie, about this dude I knew in my first unit, and he ended up having a couple kids. I think he was married with one kid at the beginning of his military career, and then had two more kids, and they both ended up being special needs. And you know, with the DEERS
Yeah.
eligibility stuff and the healthcare and all the services that family got, that was the reason that he was in. You know,
Yeah.
because otherwise he wouldn't be able to afford that kind of care for his kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of advantages you can have. I mean, I have my house because I'm in the military. Like I wouldn't have been able to afford a down payment on our house. You know, the VA loan, yeet. Like, so I mean, I've definitely enjoyed a lot of benefits from being in, and my wife having all those resources while I was gone too. Whether or not she used them, I mean, she at least knew that they were there.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of unseen benefits that are past the dollar amount that you see in your check, but, you know, it's also still fun to bitch about not being paid enough.
What else are you going to bitch about, right? We're no longer on ship burning detail.
How much time you got?
And next on our 17-part series with Chuck.
Right.
What do you got to say, man? Like, there's a lot of people struggling now. Hopefully people pick up this podcast and really get into it right away, but you know, there's a lot of other dudes that have been at downrange to Afghanistan, Iraq, other countries, Vietnam, etc. You know, is there anything that's helping you get through right now that you could extend to others?
For me, the biggest thing was, and it took a lot longer than it should have. It took too many PTSD episodes with my dog waking me up, you know, licking my face, and me being pissed drunk, calling friends. It took me too long to realize that there was a problem. Whether or not I could identify it, there was something that is wrong and is still wrong. And it isn't just related to that. It spills over into other aspects of your life that, you know, all right, you know, like drinking, for instance, right? Like, and just, it's okay to not be okay, I guess, is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
That is the biggest realization, right? Like, my wife said, "Hey, I think you need to go see somebody." And for her to say that to me, it, you know, was a big deal because, you know, she's one of those people that will, you know, all her bones could be broken and she'd be like, "I'm okay, just give me some Advil," right? So, just realizing that it's okay to not be okay, and just reaching out to somebody to talk, whatever, you know, whatever you got to do, like, it's fine. Like, there's no shame. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of my guys, and all that stuff, and reached out. We've had all these conversations. I mean, I've even called Will, and so, like, you know, it's all right, you know. I guess, for lack of better words, it's okay. And just reach out. Just, yeah.
If you break your leg, you go to the doctor.
Facts.
You know.
I think even right now, like with the context and with everything going on, so if people are tuned up, if people are starting to, you know, feel different, getting hyped up and whatnot, that's predictable. That's exactly what should be happening. And so know that, right? And then let's do something. You know, I know for me, I've been picking up a guitar a lot lately. I don't know what you guys are doing, how you're dealing with all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's funny. Podcast episode listeners
doing that.
They didn't get to just see Cole do the jerk off motion. They've just been rubbing.
I've also been doing that as well.
Ubiquitous.
Keeps you grounded.
I gotta say, you know, something I think, Cole, that you said reminded me of this quote or this idea that I got from Jocko, and that's, you know, you can't really escape pain. You have to choose, and the way he frames the choice is one between discipline or regret. So I think that's kind of funny. Like, you can be planful, you can be prepared about something, you can be disciplined and put in work for the bad stuff that you know is coming, or take advantage of the day, however, or you'll experience the pain and regret on the backside. So
Yeah.
that was something for whatever reason resonated with me. But to your question, Adam, about what I've been doing lately to try and wrap my mind around all these different things that are going on is I've just been doing a lot of reading, and I've been trying to get into kind of understanding various systems more deeply, and just a lot of history. So I know I think I'm actually trying to move away from it, but I've been using Audible a lot for audiobooks, and I've gone through a whole bunch of this lady, her name's Susan Weiss Bauer, and she wrote like history of the ancient world, history of the Middle Ages, history of the Renaissance world, and I'm through 2 of those, and they're each about like 25 or 30 hours each, and it really is like the history of civilization, just to understand and put into context what are certainly fraught times for us, but I would argue very strenuously that they're not unprecedented. So I think there's lessons to be learned there. I've also kind of looked at some more modern histories, like Andrew Bacevich's America's War for the Greater Middle East, specifically in relation to my experiences in Iraq and kind of what's going on in Afghanistan. That's been an important resource for me. And then just kind of keeping an open mind, like trying to be more self-aware internally and understand the trends and forces in the world around me so I can make good decisions and show up in a productive way.
So something that we had talked about one night when I called you has stuck with me, and I've repeated this to other guys who I've talked to. There are certain people who are wired to handle certain things differently, right? And that doesn't mean, this person is weak or this person is that, right? Like there was a call that we had where a guy tried to kill himself, shot himself in the head, and this veteran cop had been on for like 20 years, right? That was, his breaking point. And then, for me going there, I'm like, all right, cool. Like it's another Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. Right. But for this guy, like that was his breaking point. And everyone is equipped to deal with certain things at certain times. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. Like you could have, been in 8 billion firefights and, be okay. It could hit you later. And that's, it's how you deal with it. Or, I've talked to one guy who it hasn't really, if the deployment hasn't affected him at all. And he was like, is there something wrong with me? It's like, no, that's fine. Like I, worked in EMS for, the medical field for like 10 years. I've seen all this stuff. And for some reason that deployment did, X, Y, and Z to me. And that's just the way that my brain is wired. That's just the way that your brain is wired. And I remember, when you said that, like, some people are wired to handle certain things a certain way. And there's no shame in being upset or feeling a certain type of way about the experiences that you've had. Like, that's all right. That's just, everyone is different. So hearing that, I've repeated that to myself multiple times. And I'm like, all right, it's fine. Work through it. It's cool. So that has helped me a lot.
Well, I think it throws out a buzzword, empathy, right? Like that's been a buzzword in probably the last 5 years, I would think. And, me on my side that I do as a social worker and things like that, the more that we can develop and enhance emotional intelligence, that people are going to cope better and do better overall. And so like even these mantras that we repeat like that, hey man, everybody's just wired different. And so if they're having a big blow up over this, or if they're experiencing nothing, that's just how they're put together and how they're going to deal with it.
Absolutely.
And that's okay. Ultimately, like, it's okay for anybody to not be okay.
Cool. Say some more about what you've really been up to these last few months.
With in regards to the whole Afghanistan thing, I never served in Afghanistan, and for a while I really couldn't understand why it was making me as upset as it was. And to be completely honest with you, it's really been making me go stir crazy, and I've been very angry. My girlfriend, she's been a party to that. She's been a good outlet, venting to her. My guys are over there right now. These guys, I got out last year. these young 19-year-old kids, 18-year-old kids coming in, they're wide-eyed PV1s, PV2s, and I'm on my way out and trying to, pass whatever knowledge 22-year-old Cole had on down to them, and now they're in Afghanistan in the thick of it, and it sucks because you want to be there with those guys. I would give anything to be there with those guys.
Dude, I think if a bus drove around
Absolutely.
Madison picking vets up, man, how many dudes would be running out with a go bag? And
Yeah.
Oh, dude, let me go get my plate carrier right now. I got you.
Yeah.
I'll be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's been tough. Just really not being able to be there. I'm sure every like Adam said, I'm sure pretty much every veteran out there, whether you served overseas or not, whether you served in Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever it is, I think we all had a common goal in our mind, or just something that we wanted out of it. We wanted to stop the bad guys from doing bad shit, and it kind of sucks being powerless.
Man, I don't think it's regret. I don't think it's a lot of that stuff. I think it's the idea that, like, we're all looking for a purpose, and then all of a sudden people see this stuff play out and they know that they could be helpful. It's hard not to want to have that urge to go try to be helpful.
Yeah.
I'm usually reminded of the idea that I'm way out of shape for the military, and like it's somebody else's, it's the young dude's time. Now it's time for me to like make sure home is okay for these people.
It's like, hey man, I know you're not going to get that line. I got you. Daddy can get that line, right? Like, I'm not going to freeze up when so-and-so is missing, this or that. And it's really frustrating. It's like that feeling of helplessness. Like, there's nothing I can do, especially in Kabul. It's like, I know all those fucking streets. It's like, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
It sucks.
I'm just reminded of some experiences I had kind of after my active duty time was done, but sort of in the, when peers I had were still going back to the same places, but it was Iraq. So I feel like there are a lot of parallels there. And what I'm reminded of is just like, really, I don't want to sound too pithy or dismissive or anything, too curt with the idea, but it's just like I had this sense of once I got back, like, okay, things are better now. They're better for me. I'm safe. Iraq can't hurt me anymore. But then 3 guys that I, served with in various capacities spread across 3 other incidents that, that got back to me. I realized that, like, 2 of them died, and one of them had a traumatic amputation of his leg, and that like really created a lot of dissonance for me and really shook me because of that illusion of safety I had for myself. And I was like, nope, it's over, it's done. The people I worry about and care about are safe, and that was wrong.
I think you hit the nail on the head there.
And it was just dealing with that, and for me it was kind of like I had a lot of ideas about how things should be, and really I was like a true believer in certain aspects of the service and the marketing materials that you're approached with and things like that. Like, you want to stop the bad guys from doing bad things. I want to keep people safe. I feel like I've been called to fulfill this role, and it is a noble purpose. Like, well, you learn a little more, have this experience, have that experience. That illusion shifts a little. Your perception of it changes. Now, very fundamental things that are important to your healthy function, like your ideas about being safe, now those things are being called into question. And it is, you're right, powerlessness. It is all this other stuff. Maybe some guilt, maybe shame, maybe fear. But I think if we can just be honest about all the things that are going on, be honest with ourselves and know ourselves, take that interrupting breath, think about things deeply, show up in a way that we want to show up. I think we can, get through it all. But again, to me, it's just like, what are we really accomplishing over the long term with all these things and with ourselves, because we're on to other things now for the most part. So, yeah.
Well, you can leave overseas. Like I talked with my team leader while I was over there. And he said, he's had multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and he's like, just forget it all. And, he's called me, checked up on me and all that, given my history and, discussed with him. And, I was like, man, just the way my fucking brain works, like I can try to forget it. Right. But like some of that stuff, it just doesn't go away. Right. Like there's certain things you don't forget. Like, and like I'm not going to stop looking at people a certain way. I'm not going to stop feeling a certain way. I'm not going to pass semis for the rest of my life, or to a certain degree, without having some sort of like pucker factor or whatever. And there are just certain things that don't leave, right? But like you said, realizing that, like being truthful, like, all right, cool, like this is a reality in my life. Like it's not debilitating. Like I can still, live a healthy life. I can still eye everyone up. But like, can I kill you? Okay, cool. I can. All right. As long as I'm not actually acting on that and it's not interrupting my daily functions, like it's fine. But there are just certain things that you take home with you, whether or not, you've been through, as Four Leaf and Tropic Thunder said, the shit that are always going to be with you. So, that was a valid point.
I think it's nice to hear such an enlightened conversation. I think everybody's definitely put some thought into it. I know there's plenty of other dudes out there, veterans, and women that have served alike, that I don't know if they're going to be able to get to the point that maybe we're at, that have such a level of self-actualization that, how can we help some of those other folks along that maybe aren't going to be able to put this level of care into it? There's still going to be some folks that get spooled up pretty quickly, and what can we do as leaders and mentors across military and veteran culture? What else can we do? What can we promote other people to do? What other ideas do you think are out there? Because, this conflict's not going away. It's not going to get better tomorrow. And so, like, as we know, it's going to be challenging for more people. Some folks might get triggered later and things like that. What else can we do or inform other people to maybe do?
I think just having a buddy. I think that's the biggest thing. Just having somebody that can actually genuinely listen to you and understand what you are saying. Fellow vet or somebody that's been through something themselves, just somebody that can actually put themselves in your shoes, the buzzword empathy, looking out for each other.
I mean, Adam, you said, what did you say? You had a nice turn of phrase. Community is the intervention, basically. Community is
connection.
Yeah.
Connection is the intervention, right? And
right.
So, like, I know for me, I was going to try to solicit you guys, and I'll jump in, maybe insert some of my stuff. Sending silly memes, messing around with Cole and being like, hey, dude, have you gotten a contractor job? Are you working for Eric Prince yet? Like, are you Blackwater? Like, and so then at least I've opened a line of communication. He's like, and he can say to me, no, bro, I haven't done that. When I know that if I got in a search history on his phone, he probably ran through every government job.
Unrelated. Can you give me a reference?
In all honesty, I definitely went through a phase, and I feel like go through many phases. They get smaller as time goes on, but I'm just like, man, I have all these skills. Like, gosh, I wish they were. But that's not who I am anymore. I don't want to do that. It would be nice to be compensated for that skill set and have it, access it some more a little again. But that's not who I am anymore. But I definitely sympathize with like clicking on the ad, Googling this and that and the other thing.
Oh yeah, I've been calling them, leaving them messages. They haven't been getting back to me, man. I don't know what's up.
Like, what's the weight limit, bro?
It's like,
have you told them that you've killed X amount of babies yet? Maybe
this
that's
mailbox is full.
I think I left that part out. That's my
this email. Please do not reply to this, sir. This is a Wendy's, sir. No, so I'm reminded a lot of times when, we start talking about community and connection and kind of getting into a better place when you're dealing with stuff, I'm reminded of the story of Rat Park. And I don't know if we've ever really talked about it, but it's these researchers got some rats addicted to cocaine. And, turns out rats and humans.
Congrats, Chuck just got a piss test on Monday.
So anyway, the rats, after they got hooked, they some of them were sort of left in their standard laboratory cages, but some were moved to Rat Park, and Rat Park had everything that a rat would possibly ever want, like toys and community and potential mates and plenty of food and stuff. But the other rats that were left in sort of the standard laboratory cages, their cocaine addiction persisted and became so severe that they would at times choose the cocaine infused water over food or regular water, and they had some poor outcomes. But the rats that ended up in Rat Park, they managed to quit the cocaine infused water more quickly and return to happy lives based on the strengths of those connections and having access to plenty of resources and stuff. So being able to self-actualize, being able to move up that like Maslow's hierarchy of needs there, and being able to identify, you know, what's missing and getting those places in, whether it's physiological stuff, whether it's social connection, whether it's, you know, belonging, or finding your, you know, whatever your new purpose is, and truly becoming self-actualized and orienting yourself in that way. Like, that's a huge journey that's different for everybody.
And I think that's a big thing too, right? Like, we talk about community, right? And you talked about it's a different journey for everyone. Adam, your dog loves me.
No, my dog thinks you're anxious. I'm kidding.
Oh no.
But I mean, it's different for everyone, right? Like you say, you know, some people like myself, I don't want to go out and meet a whole bunch of, you know, like being an introverted extrovert or whatever, however you put it, right? You know, it depends on, you know, which way the wind blows, right? I don't want to go meet 8 billion people I don't know, or there's some days, you know, I might, you know, it kind of depends, right? So I think it depends on finding out what works for you best, right?
It's definitely nice to hear, you know, so many different ways to kind of crack the nut on being healthy and getting well and things like that. So appreciate you stopping by. Like I said, it's nice to see you in one piece, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's good to be in one piece.
I had a great time being on. Thanks, guys, for inviting me.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing more about your story, Cole, and having you back for some more chats. I'm sure
Yeah, of course.
Coordinate for that. And Charlie, best of luck at paramedic school. I know that's going to be a big step for the firefighting career. I'm proud of you. I appreciate what you do for the community. I'm glad that you're doing that for yourself too and moving forward.
Thank you. If you call 911 and you see a tiny brown guy, it might be me.
Well, I'm just going to start pranking 911.
That's all right. That's Station 10. I don't work there, so go for it, bud.
Right on. Fight or die, everybody.
Yeah, fight or die. Thanks for listening.
Yes, I